You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. In modern digital environments, the process of e-discovery and the imposition of legal holds serve as foundational mechanisms for ensuring that electronically stored information remains intact, reliable, and accessible when disputes or investigations arise. Organizations increasingly operate in the cloud, where storage is vast, distributed, and often managed by third parties. This shift complicates long-standing legal practices designed for more centralized systems. The purpose of e-discovery in cloud environments is to preserve, search, and ultimately produce evidence in ways that maintain credibility before regulators and courts. Legal holds act as a safeguard against spoliation, ensuring that critical data is not deleted or altered during sensitive periods. Together, these mechanisms represent the intersection of law, technology, and compliance, where the stakes include not just regulatory penalties, but also reputational damage and diminished trust in how an organization manages digital evidence in a globally networked landscape. Electronic discovery, or e-discovery, refers to the legal process of identifying, preserving, collecting, reviewing, and producing electronically stored information, often shortened to ESI. Unlike traditional discovery, which might have involved paper records or physical artifacts, e-discovery is uniquely concerned with the digital traces left behind in modern business operations. This can range from emails and instant messages to system logs and collaborative documents stored across multiple platforms. Its purpose is to provide litigants, investigators, and courts with a defensible process to surface relevant information while minimizing unnecessary exposure of unrelated materials. The complexity arises because digital data is both ephemeral and prolific, making it easy to overwrite or lose unintentionally. Without a structured approach, organizations risk accusations of evidence spoliation or obstruction. Thus, e-discovery represents both a technical and legal discipline, requiring collaboration between attorneys, information security professionals, and IT administrators to ensure reliability and fairness in proceedings. A legal hold, sometimes called a litigation hold, is a formal instruction to preserve potentially relevant electronically stored information when litigation, regulatory action, or internal investigation is reasonably anticipated. Once such a directive is issued, ordinary practices like automated deletion schedules, data lifecycle management, or mailbox cleanup rules must be suspended to avoid accidental destruction of evidence. This creates a legal duty that extends not only to the IT staff managing storage systems, but also to individual custodians, such as employees whose communications may be relevant. The legal hold is therefore both procedural and cultural. It depends on the cooperation of people as well as the configuration of systems. Failure to implement a timely and thorough hold can lead to sanctions, fines, or adverse judgments. By contrast, a well-executed hold strengthens an organization's credibility, demonstrating to the court that it takes its obligations seriously and is acting transparently to protect the evidentiary record. The Electronic Discovery Reference Model, often abbreviated as EDRM, provides a structured framework to guide organizations through the stages of e-discovery. It begins with information governance, which lays the groundwork for disciplined data management before any dispute even arises. Once an issue emerges, the process moves through stages of identification, preservation, collection, processing, review, and analysis, culminating in production and presentation of relevant materials. This model is important because it allows diverse stakeholders, legal teams, technical staff, compliance officers, and outside counsel to speak a common language and coordinate their activities. Rather than treating discovery as an ad hoc scramble, the EDRM encourages a methodical and repeatable approach. In cloud environments, where systems are often fragmented across providers and regions, this structure helps maintain defensibility. By mapping each action to an accepted stage of the model, organizations can demonstrate to courts that they acted systematically rather than haphazardly, reducing the risk of challenge. Legal frameworks, such as the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, or FRCP, in the United States, establish binding obligations for how organizations must manage discovery. Similar rules exist globally, each reflecting jurisdictional priorities but generally converging on principles of fairness, proportionality, and preservation. Under the FRCP, for example, parties are expected to preserve relevant ESI once they reasonably anticipate litigation, and they must engage in proportional discovery, meaning that the effort to collect evidence must be balanced against the value of the case. Courts often consider factors like cost, accessibility, and importance in determining whether discovery requests are excessive. In the cloud, where data may be replicated across continents, proportionality becomes especially important, as unbounded requests could impose crippling financial and technical burdens. By understanding these rules, organizations can navigate requests more strategically, ensuring compliance, while also protecting against undue strain on operations or unnecessary disclosure of sensitive information. Cloud data sources expand the scope of discovery significantly beyond the confines of traditional file servers. In this landscape, relevant evidence may reside in object storage buckets, block storage volumes, or network file systems, each with unique formats and access controls. Managed databases add another dimension, storing structured data like customer records or transaction histories. Application logs can reveal sequences of events or anomalies, while collaboration platforms such as chat systems or project boards capture informal but highly probative exchanges. Because of this variety, e-discovery teams must understand not only the types of storage but also the metadata and permissions that govern them. Collecting from cloud sources often requires coordination with providers, who control aspects like retention policies and export formats. The sheer diversity and dynamic nature of these systems makes planning critical. Without accurate data mapping and early engagement with providers, organizations risk missing critical evidence or facing costly delays during litigation. Multi-tenancy and outsourced operations add layers of complexity to the process of discovery in cloud environments. Multi-tenancy means that a single physical infrastructure is shared among many customers, with logical boundaries separating their data. While this is efficient, it complicates the concept of custody and control, as courts may question whether an organization truly has exclusive dominion over information stored in a shared system. Outsourcing further blurs lines, since providers may handle backups, replication, or disaster recovery on behalf of their clients. In these situations, questions often arise about who can authorize access, how segregation is maintained, and what safeguards prevent accidental or unauthorized disclosures. For discovery teams, this requires careful contract negotiation and awareness of provider responsibilities. Establishing clear delineations of control not only reduces disputes during litigation, but also strengthens an organization's readiness, ensuring that discovery requests can be fulfilled without violating other tenants, privacy, or contractual obligations. Preservation in place and copy-based preservation represent two different approaches to safeguarding data under a legal hold. Preservation in place means leaving the data where it resides, such as in live email accounts or collaboration platforms, but applying system-level controls to freeze or lock relevant materials. This method reduces duplication and allows custodians to continue working without disruption. Copy-based preservation, by contrast, involves exporting the data to a separate repository under controlled access, which can simplify management but also consume storage and may raise chain-of-custody questions. Each approach has advantages and drawbacks, and many organizations use them in combination depending on the context. For example, a company might preserve chat logs in place while exporting financial records to a secure repository. The key is to document the rationale for the chosen method and ensure that both integrity and accessibility are maintained throughout the hold period to withstand later legal scrutiny. Metadata integrity is essential for ensuring that collected evidence remains authentic and meaningful. Metadata refers to the descriptive information attached to files and records, such as timestamps, authorship, file paths, and access attributes. These details provide the context that allows investigators and courts to reconstruct when a document was created, who edited it, and under what circumstances it was accessed. If metadata is altered during collection or preservation, the evidentiary value of the data may be undermined, as opposing counsel could argue that the information has been tampered with. Maintaining metadata integrity requires using forensically sound tools and processes, as well as documenting each step of handling. For example, hashing can demonstrate that no unauthorized modifications have occurred. In cloud systems, where automated processes frequently update metadata, care must be taken to distinguish between system-generated changes and user actions, ensuring that authenticity remains defensible under legal examination. Time synchronization across systems plays a subtle but vital role in e-discovery. Events often need to be reconstructed into coherent timelines, showing what happened, when, and by whom. If system clocks differ significantly, the resulting timeline may appear inconsistent or misleading, creating opportunities for disputes over sequence and authenticity. Synchronization protocols such as the Network Time Protocol or NTP help align clocks across distributed systems so that log entries and file modifications can be reliably correlated. In cloud environments, where applications span multiple regions and providers, consistent timing is especially challenging but also indispensable. A breach investigation, for example, may hinge on whether a login occurred before or after a suspicious file transfer. If the timestamps conflict due to unsynchronized clocks, arguments about tampering or system error may surface. Proper time alignment strengthens evidentiary reliability, reassuring courts and regulators that reconstructed timelines reflect reality rather than artifacts of technical inconsistency. Versioning, snapshots, and write once read many, or WARM, retention mechanisms introduce further layers of complexity to legal holds. Versioning allows multiple iterations of a file to be preserved, providing a historical trail of edits that may reveal intent or sequence of actions. Snapshots capture point-in-time states of systems or volumes, enabling investigators to roll back and examine conditions as they existed at a specific moment. Worm storage enforces immutability by preventing modification or deletion, making it attractive for compliance purposes. Yet these mechanisms must be carefully scoped, as overpreservation can create overwhelming volumes of data, while underpreservation risks spoliation claims. The legal team must balance scope and duration against operational realities. For instance, a legal hold may require preserving not only the current version of a contract, but also prior drafts, all while ensuring that storage costs and administrative burdens remain manageable for the organization's IT and compliance staff. Role separation is an important safeguard in managing e-discovery and legal holds. It refers to the principle that different individuals or teams should be responsible for distinct functions, reducing the risk of conflicts of interest or unauthorized access. For example, while IT staff may execute technical tasks such as applying holds or exporting data, legal teams should define the scope and authorize actions. Auditing capabilities are also critical, providing a verifiable record of who did what and when. This separation not only strengthens internal controls, but also builds trust with external reviewers and courts. If one person had unchecked authority over both defining and carrying out holds, the integrity of the process could be questioned. By structuring roles carefully, organizations create a defensible system that demonstrates diligence and fairness. In practice, this means designating custodians, administrators, and legal overseers with clearly defined, documented, and audited responsibilities throughout the discovery lifecycle. Data mapping is another key practice that underpins efficient discovery. It involves cataloging the organization's information systems, custodians, and data flows to build a comprehensive inventory of where information resides and how it moves. This map becomes a crucial tool when discovery obligations arise, allowing teams to quickly pinpoint likely sources of relevant data rather than conducting costly and time-consuming fishing expeditions. In cloud environments, data mapping must include external providers, software-as-a-service platforms, and cross-border flows that may be subject to unique regulatory regimes. For example, Mapping may reveal that customer support logs are stored in a European data center under GDPR constraints, while financial records reside in an American provider's database. Armed with this knowledge, legal teams can tailor their preservation and collection strategies accordingly. Without accurate mapping, discovery can become inefficient or incomplete, exposing the organization to sanctions for failing to identify or preserve all relevant electronically stored information. Search methodologies bring structure to the process of finding relevant data within large volumes of electronically stored information. Keyword searches remain common, using terms linked to people, events, or subjects under investigation. Pattern-based searches can detect recurring structures, such as credit card numbers or IP addresses. Concept-based searching goes further, leveraging algorithms to identify documents with related themes even if the exact keywords differ. Each methodology must be documented with clear criteria, scope, and rationale to ensure defensibility. In cloud platforms where data can be massive and distributed, combining approaches often yields the best results. For example, an investigation might begin with keyword searches to narrow the field, then apply concept searching to uncover related but less obvious materials. Courts increasingly expect transparency in these methods, meaning that legal teams must be prepared to explain not just what they found but how they searched, showing that the process was reasonable and not arbitrary. Export formats, deduplication, and hashing are essential steps for making collected data ready for review while maintaining integrity. Export formats determine how data will be delivered to reviewers, often balancing readability with preservation of metadata. Deduplication reduces redundancy by removing identical copies of files, which both lowers costs and prevents reviewers from wasting time on repetitive information. Hashing provides a digital fingerprint for each file, ensuring that any subsequent alteration would be immediately detectable. In combination, these practices help streamline the discovery workflow and strengthen chain of custody protections. For example, deduplicated email collections allow investigators to focus on unique communications, while hashing ensures that no one questions whether a file was tampered with during transfer. In the cloud, where storage volumes can be immense, these steps are particularly valuable. Without them, review teams may be overwhelmed, and the organization may struggle to demonstrate that the data presented is both authentic and complete. Privacy, secrecy, and confidentiality constraints complicate e-discovery, particularly in multinational contexts. Discovery requests may conflict with laws designed to protect personal information, trade secrets, or classified material. To balance these obligations, organizations often employ minimization techniques, ensuring that only relevant portions of a dataset are collected. Redaction further protects sensitive elements, such as social security numbers or proprietary formulas, before data is shared with opposing parties. Controlled reviewer access adds another safeguard, ensuring that only authorized individuals can see restricted information. For instance, a cloud-hosted email archive might contain both business correspondence relevant to litigation and sensitive personal details about employees. By applying redaction and access controls, the organization fulfills its discovery duties while maintaining compliance with privacy regulations. This balancing act is delicate. Failure to protect private information can lead to regulatory penalties, while over-redaction or excessive withholding can undermine credibility in the eyes of the court. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Cross-functional orchestration is essential to achieving defensible and efficient e-discovery in cloud environments. Legal teams may define the obligations, but they cannot execute them without the active participation of compliance officers, security practitioners, and IT administrators who manage the systems. Each group brings a unique perspective. Legal ensures that holds are valid and scoped appropriately. Compliance ensures that industry or jurisdictional rules are considered. Security protects against tampering or data breaches. And IT manages the technical preservation and collection tasks. Without this alignment, gaps appear, such as holds that are improperly implemented or evidence that becomes inaccessible. By establishing a coordinated process, often formalized through policies or playbooks, organizations ensure that each step is executed consistently and in a way that can withstand scrutiny. This orchestration not only reduces internal conflict, but also builds external trust, demonstrating diligence to regulators, courts, and opposing counsel. Custodian notification and acknowledgement tracking form the human backbone of a legal hold process. When litigation or an investigation arises, relevant custodians, employees, or contractors who may have information tied to the matter must be formally notified of their duty to preserve. Notifications explain the scope of the hold, what kinds of information must be retained, and what activities must cease, such as deleting emails or emptying recycle bins. But simply sending these notifications is not enough. Acknowledgement tracking ensures that custodians have received, read, and understood the instructions. This may take the form of electronic signatures or system logs confirming compliance. Such documentation is critical when courts later ask whether the organization acted responsibly in preserving evidence. By creating a traceable record of custodian awareness, organizations demonstrate that the process is not only policy-driven but also actively enforced, which reduces the risk of sanctions and enhances the defensibility of their overall discovery practices. Defining the scope of a legal hold is both a legal and technical exercise that determines who and what falls under preservation. Scope typically includes custodians, systems, date ranges, and data types, and must be reassessed periodically as cases evolve. Overly broad holds can lead to significant cost and operational burden, preserving vast amounts of irrelevant data. On the other hand, too narrow a scope risks failing to preserve vital information, exposing the organization to accusations of spoliation. In cloud settings, defining scope may require collaboration with service providers to determine where relevant data resides and what technical controls can enforce preservation. For example, scoping may include preserving all communications of a sales team between specific dates, while excluding routine system logs outside that period. Reassessment ensures that as facts emerge, the hold remains accurate and proportional. This balance is fundamental to building a process that is fair, efficient, and legally defensible. The concept of chain of custody underpins the credibility of evidence in legal settings. It refers to the documented history of how electronically stored information has been collected, transferred, stored, and presented. Each step in the process must be recorded, including who handled the data, when it was accessed, and under what conditions. Digital fingerprints such as hash values provide mathematical proof that the data has not been altered. In cloud environments, chain of custody extends to interactions with providers, requiring assurance that exports and transfers are secure and verifiable. For example, when log files are exported from a cloud management console, the process should generate both metadata and hashes to confirm integrity. Without a clear chain of custody, evidence may be excluded or challenged as unreliable. By maintaining meticulous documentation, organizations can prove to courts that the data presented is authentic and has been preserved in a tamper-resistant manner. Time synchronization, often taken for granted, becomes critical when events are scrutinized in the context of litigation or investigations. Network Time Protocol, or NTP, ensures that systems across distributed environments maintain consistent clocks. Without synchronization, activity logs may present conflicting or impossible sequences, such as a file being accessed before it was created. This confusion not only complicates analysis but also creates openings for disputes about authenticity. In cloud environments where workloads run across global data centers, even small clock skews can accumulate into significant discrepancies. Synchronization reduces the risk of such disputes, providing confidence that reconstructed timelines accurately reflect the order of events. This reliability is crucial for matters such as breach investigations or fraud cases, where a precise sequence of logins, transactions, and transfers can determine liability. By enforcing disciplined use of NTP or equivalent services, Organizations strengthen both operational reliability and evidentiary defensibility in high-stakes legal contexts. Encryption, key custody, and decryption procedures are central issues in discovery because they determine whether data can be lawfully accessed and reviewed. Cloud providers often encrypt data at rest and in transit, but the ability to decrypt depends on how keys are managed. If keys are solely in the provider's control, clients may need contractual assistance to access relevant evidence. Conversely, if the client controls the keys, internal procedures must ensure that only authorized personnel use them for legitimate purposes under a legal hold. Courts expect organizations to have documented processes that describe how encrypted evidence is accessed without compromising unrelated materials. For example, data subject to attorney-client privilege should remain inaccessible even as other evidence is decrypted. Secure handling of keys thus balances legal obligations with privacy rights. Poorly managed key procedures not only impede timely discovery, but can also trigger suspicion that evidence is being selectively withheld or compromised. Bring your own key and hold your own key models further complicate discovery timelines and feasibility. In a bring-your-own-key arrangement, the client generates and supplies the encryption keys used by the provider's infrastructure. In a hold-your-own-key model, the client retains complete control, often through a dedicated hardware module or external key management system. While these models enhance security and sovereignty, they introduce legal and technical challenges. Discovery teams may need access to the keys to decrypt relevant materials, raising issues of confidentiality and control. For instance, if only a small group within the organization has access to the keys, delays may occur while authorizations are obtained. Additionally, disputes can arise if opposing parties argue that evidence was inaccessible due to key restrictions. Balancing the security benefits of BYOK and HYOK with discovery obligations requires careful planning, documentation, and sometimes negotiation with courts and regulators. Provider contracts and service-level agreements, or SLAs, are another critical layer in the discovery landscape. These documents often specify what assistance the provider will give in preserving, exporting, or producing data under legal requests. Key terms may include timelines for responding to subpoenas, formats for data exports, and limitations on the provider's liability. Without such clarity, organizations may find themselves caught between court deadlines and provider constraints. For example, if a provider requires weeks to process a large export while the court demands production in days, the organization may face penalties. SLAs also define cost structures, such as charges for data egress or expedited processing. By negotiating these terms up front, clients can ensure that discovery obligations remain feasible and predictable. In essence, contracts and SLAs translate the abstract duty of preservation into practical commitments, aligning the capabilities of cloud providers with the legal responsibilities of their customers. International transfer mechanisms and localization policies create unique barriers in cloud-based discovery. Many jurisdictions impose strict rules on how personal or sensitive data can move across borders, often requiring specific safeguards such as standard contractual clauses or adequacy decisions. Localization policies may mandate that certain data never leave national boundaries, complicating global investigations. For instance, a company headquartered in the United States may need access to transaction records stored in a European data center, but GDPR restrictions may limit how those records can be transferred. Failure to comply can result in hefty fines and reputational harm. To navigate these challenges, organizations must work with legal counsel to identify permissible transfer mechanisms and design workflows that respect both discovery obligations and privacy laws. This balancing act is delicate, requiring organizations to demonstrate to courts that they have acted in good faith while still adhering to international regulatory requirements. Cost controls are a vital part of proportional discovery, ensuring that organizations do not overextend resources in pursuit of marginally useful information. In the cloud, costs can escalate quickly due to egress charges for moving data out of provider environments, processing fees for converting formats, and licensing costs for review platforms. Courts recognize that discovery should be proportional, and they may grant relief if the costs of producing certain data outweigh its likely benefit. To manage this, organizations implement budgeting strategies, prioritize high-value sources, and use technology such as deduplication and predictive coding to streamline review. Transparent documentation of these cost control measures strengthens an organization's position if challenged in court. For example, demonstrating that low-value data was excluded because it would cost millions to produce while the expected benefit was negligible supports a proportionality defense. Ultimately, cost management ensures that discovery remains sustainable while meeting legal and ethical obligations. Readiness exercises and mock collections prepare organizations for the real-world pressures of discovery. These rehearsals validate procedures, tool chains, and workflows by simulating legal hold scenarios. Teams practice issuing notifications, applying preservation in place, collecting targeted data sets, and packaging evidence for review. Through these drills, organizations identify weaknesses, such as unclear role definitions or tool limitations, and address them before facing actual litigation deadlines. For example, a mock collection may reveal that a provider's export process omits certain metadata fields, allowing the team to negotiate corrections in advance. Readiness exercises also serve as training for staff, ensuring that when real holds arise, they respond with confidence and consistency. Courts increasingly value evidence of such proactive efforts as they demonstrate an organization's commitment to defensible practices. By investing in preparation, organizations minimize the risk of procedural failures that could undermine both compliance and credibility in high-stakes legal matters. Hold release procedures define the steps for lifting a legal hold once it is no longer needed. This stage is often overlooked but is just as critical as initial preservation. Once litigation or an investigation concludes, organizations must document the decision to release, notify custodians, and resume normal data lifecycle activities, such as deletion or archiving. Clear documentation ensures that records of when and why a hold was lifted exist for future reference, preventing confusion or disputes. It also helps avoid unnecessary storage costs from preserving data indefinitely. For example, releasing a hold may allow routine cleanup processes to delete outdated backups, freeing resources while still maintaining compliance. Failure to release holds properly can create risks of over-preservation, leading to privacy concerns and inflated costs. Well-structured release procedures show that the organization manages discovery holistically, with accountability across the full life cycle from preservation through disposition. Incident-driven holds integrate discovery with security and compliance workflows. When a breach or security incident occurs, organizations may need to preserve related evidence immediately, not only for internal analysis but also for regulatory reporting or anticipated litigation. For example, a data breach affecting customer accounts could trigger a legal hold on logs, emails, and forensic images tied to the incident. These holds may overlap with ongoing investigations by regulators, requiring careful coordination to ensure compliance without disrupting the security response. Incident-driven holds highlight the need for agile processes, as they may arise suddenly and demand rapid implementation. Documentation of when and how these holds were enacted becomes critical, as regulators or courts may later scrutinize whether the organization preserved evidence appropriately. By integrating discovery protocols into incident response plans, organizations ensure that they can react swiftly to unexpected challenges while maintaining defensibility. Production packages represent the culmination of the discovery process, delivering the preserved and reviewed evidence to requesting parties. These packages often include native documents, text renderings, load files for review platforms, and accompanying metadata. The goal is to provide information in a usable and verifiable format that meets both legal standards and opposing counsel's needs. For example, producing email evidence may involve not only the messages themselves but also metadata fields such as sender, recipient, timestamps, and attachments. Deduplication and hashing performed earlier in the process ensure that the package is efficient and defensible. Courts may scrutinize the completeness and usability of production packages, making careful preparation essential. By following established standards and documenting each step, organizations demonstrate that they have acted responsibly and transparently. This final step ties together preservation, collection, and review, presenting a cohesive narrative of diligence and integrity throughout the e-discovery lifecycle. For learners preparing for the Security Plus exam, the exam relevance of this topic lies in understanding defensible preservation, coordination with cloud providers, privacy constraints, and assurance of evidence integrity in discovery processes. Questions may test the ability to identify correct procedures for applying legal holds, the role of encryption in preserving access, or the impact of international privacy laws on cross-border data collection. The key takeaway is that cloud discovery is not just about locating data, but about doing so in a manner that withstands legal scrutiny. Emphasis falls on governance, chain of custody, and provider coordination. While the exam may not demand deep legal expertise, it expects familiarity with the technical and procedural safeguards that make e-discovery defensible. Mastery of these principles not only aids in exam success, but also equips professionals to manage real-world challenges with confidence and credibility. In summary, disciplined legal holds and e-discovery processes in cloud environments are indispensable for preserving authenticity, meeting regulatory and judicial obligations, and withstanding external scrutiny. These processes weave together technical safeguards such as encryption, time synchronization, and metadata integrity with procedural elements like custodian notifications, scope definition, and chain of custody documentation. The global and multi-tenant nature of cloud computing intensifies the complexity, demanding cross-functional coordination and careful attention to contractual and legal frameworks. By practicing readiness drills, maintaining clear release procedures, and integrating discovery into incident response, organizations build resilience. For cybersecurity professionals, these capabilities underscore the broader role of security in enabling compliance and trust. Ultimately, e-discovery and legal holds are not just about preserving data, but about preserving confidence in the integrity of evidence, the reliability of processes, and the credibility of the organization before courts, regulators, and the public. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.